Welcome. It's just gone 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Wednesday, the 5th of June, and you are watching episode 134 of Regional Wrap. Regional Wrap, providing insight on the issues affecting regional Australia and giving a voice to regional residents. My name is Bill Bates, and joining me on this episode, land doesn't protect fauna, humans do, are my guests, Chris Gale, a self-employed businessman and experienced recreational hunter. And again, we're joined by Alan Keane, executive member of Save Our Summits Association. Chris was raised on a rural New South Wales property and started camping on a local farm around 8 years of age, where he started to develop a drive to assist the local farmers with feral animal control. At 17, he had an opportunity to travel to remote farming areas in New South Wales and Queensland and witness firsthand the damage feral pigs cause to crops, livestock and native species. As a result of this experience, Chris has embarked on a journey of decades, engaged in the control of feral pig numbers on private land, which included for 7 years harvesting pigs for export for both human consumption and pet food markets. While responsible for private landowners are proactive in feral animal management, Chris, like most recreational hunters, is frustrated by the government's inaction to implement effective eradication programs on public land and their continued resistance to allow suitably experienced hunters and shooters access to public land in Queensland to assist with the control of feral animals and protect our native environment. Alan is a recently retired horticultural landscape gardener and maintenance business owner, as well as a retail and wholesale nursery operator. He is passionate about the environment, a nature lover and avid hiker. Welcome, Chris and Alan.
Hello. Thank you.
It's good to see you, gentlemen. If I could start with you, Chris, give us a bit of a rundown of your misspent youth and all those sort of things, and a bit of an idea of your business operations as well, because obviously you're just a lot more than just the experienced hunter.
Yeah. I grew up in regional New South Wales, spent a lot of time out on farms, and as in the introduction, started out trapping rabbits way back when. They were a big problem in the area we were in, digging lots of holes under fences, causing damage there. And yeah, it was good fun being out in the bush. So I think, I was about 8 years old. We were, me and a mate were camping on a regular basis. Every week or 2 weeks we'd be out chasing rabbits, and just progressed through with the feral animal control from there, when farmers had contacted us and asked us to, back then, take care of feral goats that were impeding their sheep flocks. And once I got a taste of pig hunting with a really professional crew and saw the damage that they did to native wildlife, stock and cropping country, that really ignited a passion in me to do something about it.
Just as a matter of interest, you hunt pigs with a rifle, so you obviously have to keep everything in regards to the Weapons Act and that. Does that has that been more difficult as time progresses, or once you're sort of established as a responsible, respected hunter and shooter, it's easy to manage the intricacies of licensing and maintenance and security of your weapons?
That's a whole other issue there. Look, for the majority, the way the weapons licensing, my experience with weapons licensing in Queensland has always been positive. And as long as you stay up to date with any current changes or anything like that, you can work quite well within there. It's when seasons like now, the past couple of years, it's very difficult to get high capacity magazines or self-loading rifles, which I understand why they have restrictions on those. However, when you're encountering large mobs, and I'm talking 50 to 100 pigs in mobs, things like that, and you've got a 5-shot bolt action rifle, your effectiveness is restricted.
If you could also just enlighten us in regards to your business activities, because you're also a consultant business as well, I believe.
Yes, yeah. So I consult with industrial manufacturing businesses throughout Queensland and New South Wales down into Victoria. So that's going in, setting up preventive maintenance schedules for them, making sure their machines running to the best efficiencies that they can by tracking the performance and downtime of the machines, and then also organising regular servicing and repair work to be carried out.
Okay, then. I'm turning over to you, Alan. You were with us in episode 131 with Mark Hendricks, talking about the lockout of land, and of particular interest was Mount Warning. If you can give us a bit of your experience in regards to your travels around and your encounters with the damage that feral animals have done.
Sure. I've had a bit of time out west. I was, for a time, 4 years based in Roma. I was a Telecom Australia sales rep, just one. It covered 1/3 of Queensland. So I got to see a lot of the outback, and it was quite a wonderful experience, and met some amazing station. I don't know what they call them. They're not just farmers. They've got thousands and thousands of square meters of land which they manage. And what I saw out there, they were very respectful of the land, and in my view, they were environmentalists themselves. They looked after the land, they respected it, and they understood the damage that exotic fauna and exotic animals can do to their properties. So I had a bit of time out there seeing that. One of my favourite places to go for some recreation was Carnarvon Gorge, which wasn't that far from Roma. And it was really lovely to go there back in those days. That was 40 plus years ago. There was no issues at that time that I was aware of with pigs, feral pigs. The place was just full of echidnas, even in the daytime. In the tourist park, you just about trip over echidnas. They were just everywhere. There was so much wildlife, it was amazing. And then you jump forward to about 6, 7 years ago, I started to frequent there again because I took up hiking as a hobby once my children all grew up. And over the first, about 6, 7 years ago, you could see echidnas fairly frequently, but ensuing visits there, they just slowly disappeared. I'm also, my main nursery was called Cycad Gardens Nursery, so I am an absolute lover of those ancient plants, cycads, and Carnarvon Gorge has a particular macrozamia that grows there, and a lot of people probably mistake them for palm trees, but they're cycads, they're everywhere, and they are protected. And it was so sad to see on my particular trip there that I could tell there were pigs there. You could see that the tracks were dug up and so on. But there were cycads that were chewed right through so far at the base to get in the starchy centre that they'd fallen over. So those trees were dead. And that really started to grate on me, so much so that I contacted national parks, got nowhere, directed to Toowoomba head office, got nowhere. So I went to, I used to advertise when I had my nursery. I had a nursery in Roma as well. So I went to the Roma Times and spoke to the editor, and he did some interviews with me just over the phone, and they did a story in the Roma Times, and it was in relation to bow hunting, because a friend of mine at the time was a bow hunter, and the rangers there said that it's very difficult to use rifles in the gorge because of the, and Chris would know more about this, the potential, what do you call it when it bounces off?
Ricochets, yeah.
That's it, yeah. And also that noise would carry a lot more than out in an open field, I imagine. So as soon as they get a report of a shot from anybody anywhere, they're instructed to put the rifles away. So it resorted to baiting, and that obviously wasn't working because the place was absolutely just destroyed. There's so much damage there. It even escalated to a stage another time that I went, and I was walking around with a ranger, and there was a section, there'd been a storm through the gorge there, and there was a section of massive, several 100-year-old eucalypt trees that had fallen. They ripped out of the ground. And the discussion there was, could have been a wind tunnel that formed through the gorges, bit of a tornado or whatever, but it was only in one section. I stood there at the base of one of the massive, they were cutting them up with chainsaw. There was one still there that hadn't been cut up yet. At the base, looking at the roots, and I said to this fellow with me, "What do you see here?" And looked around and said, "Well, the roots are ripped out of the ground." And I said, "Well, it's alluvial, so it's gravel. There's not much to hold there. But what else?" And he said, "Oh, the pigs have been here." Yeah, exactly. Even the ranger had no clue, the rangers had no clue that those trees fell because of the pig damage. So there's a lot of different facets, as Chris will, highlight as well. He knows a lot more than I do, but I've seen firsthand that situation. I've seen the decline of animals there because they'll eat every animal they can get. Eggs, they'll eat all the eggs, but they also dig down as far as the food goes with the root structures, and that, in this instance, caused the trees to fall. But I'll stop for now. There's some other places that I want to talk about, but I'll hand over to Chris if that's okay with you, Bill, to add some more to me.
Just before we move on, there is a very active program by the government to secure more land for public holdings in both protected area states, add to the national forest. I think we've got somewhere in the order of about 8% of Queensland's now in that sort of protected program that they've got, but they're aiming to get it up to 17%. And we've seen an active program, especially up in, one example is in Winton and Longreach, where they've bought up three large cattle operations totaling some 500,000 hectares. And the plan is, or they're already started, to destock 30,000 cattle, rip out all the fencing, pull out all the water points, all the improvements over the last, since those cattle stations were established, bulldoze all the outbuildings, and if the homesteads don't come up to a sort of heritage type standard, they'll be also bulldozed. So we now have a situation where the government and together with working with NGOs are buying up additional land and putting into this network of public lands. Now, from my conversations with other people, if you're a farmer and you live next to public land like a state forest or national park or anything, it's probably the worst neighbour you could ever have in regards to feral animals coming from that area into yours. So maybe, Chris, you can enlighten this at the moment in regards to land that is already under public, under government control or ownership. Well, I wouldn't say control or management, and the problems we've got there as far as sort of the volume of problem we've got. And do you think them simply by adding more land to this sort of holdings, things are going to improve for our wildlife?
Definitely not. I'll just jump back a little bit to Carnarvon Gorge on what Alan was saying. My wife and I, we're pretty avid hikers as well. and I think it was about 2019 we went through there. And from the minute you left the information centre, you walk across a small river on stones. As soon as we hit the other side, there was feral pig damage, and that's in the most highly trafficked area of the gorge itself. We ended up doing the Great Walk, which is, I think it's 124 kilometres over 3 or 4 days, and there wasn't. You couldn't walk for 10 metres without seeing damage from the pigs. And at one stage, we went through an area, and I believe it's the plants that Alan was talking about. You could see where the pigs had taken all the seed that had dropped on the ground and then ripped the roots up, and the trees were laying on the ground dead. So like they would never regenerate because they've eaten all the seed that's there and then killed the parent plant. We saw over those few days, we saw wild horses in there, wild cattle and pigs getting around. And as Alan alluded to, the rangers do a great job for what they're trained for, but they don't understand what it takes to control those feral animals, and especially pigs, because they can proliferate so much. And they're omnivorous, they eat everything, and they will kill. So they will kill native animals. They dig up nests, they'll kill lizards, anything that they can get hold of. So expanding the public land, fantastic, look after the environment and things like that, but there needs to be effective control methods in there. And when you look at the figures of what we do ourselves, I've been tracking our numbers the last 3 years, just between myself and one of my friends that we hunt together all the time. And what the Australian Pig Doggers and Hunters Association are doing on a much larger scale, there's quite an effective resource there that the government could utilise. And instead of spending money trying to control this, they can put experts in there that you could pay for a licence, as in New South Wales and Victoria, to access those areas and do some good for the environment and for the local businesses around the place.
So where are the environmentalists on this? Of course, this is what I don't really understand. We have all these environments and groups. In most local communities, there's some sort of environmental group, and then you've got, of course, the Queensland Conservation Council, and all these people who want to see more land come into the public realm, to keep humans out of there, and just leave it to nature to do its bit. But they don't seem to. The acquisition seems to be the most important, but the actual management and control within that land doesn't seem to figure into it, because it's going to cost money to do that. You've got to also have people there who are trained in making sure they can manage the land and manage the damaging effects and reduce it. Do you think they need to be sort of, I don't know, chastised or counsel or something? Well, if you're going to acquire this land, then part of the operation in purchasing it is also have the funding and the resources to manage that land. But it doesn't seem to figure into the equation.
No, and there's several entities around, associations around. They actively campaign to stop recreational hunters accessing places. So in New South Wales, there's an association down there. Their numbers that they put out, they're accurate to a point, but they don't tell the whole story. And so then they say hunting is not an effective means of, say, feral pig control. because they're taking a very, very small data point, and then putting that against the total number of pigs in the country. And so it's very skewed to their way of thinking of exclude all the hunters from the area and just poison everything. And I've seen firsthand what poison does, and everything I've seen is it doesn't just kill target animals, it kills non-target animals. And I haven't had anybody be able to prove that to me otherwise. I've seen eagles, goannas dead next to pigs that have been baited. Also, if pigs or wild dogs, if one takes a bait and it doesn't kill those animals, they will teach the rest of their mob or their pack not to go near those. Whether it's grain or whether it's a meat source, they will actually train their offspring not to go near that type of thing and go for different food sources. There is some contract shooting that goes on, aerial and ground, and shooting is not the be all and end all of control methods, especially on large scales. You need several different approaches to be doing it. Trapping is a big thing, especially for feral pigs as well, and can be very effective. But again, that's food source specific. If there's a lot of food around, it's very hard to get a pig to go into a trap because they're naturally wary. They see something different, but there's food down the road. They're going to go down the road and eat what they know rather than take any sort of risk of going near unfamiliar structures or anything like that.
With the feral pig numbers, I mean, I think I did a show with Ned Makem from Piggers and Shooters and Doggers and Hunters.
Yeah.
And they've got a particular method, of course. But I think doing a bit of research there, the numbers is something like 22 million feral pigs. I don't know how you would make a dent in 22 million feral pigs to sort of make them go on a downward decline of population in any short term. So if you've got any sort of feeling in regards to what the numbers are these days and where they're sort of growing in numbers and where maybe some areas have got them under control a bit and the difference between those areas, or is it just who knows?
Yeah. I was actually talking to Ned last week. And he was kind enough to share the data from their association. So look, there's between the latest estimate that came out from one government department said there was 4 million pigs in all of Australia. That's grossly inaccurate. Generally, on most government sites that you're looking at, they're saying 24 to 30 million pigs. Okay, they cover 50% of the country. So, in order to have an impact, and I've actually been personally involved and ran a couple of programs in New South Wales where we removed pigs from an area completely, and to this day, there's still not pigs in that area, and population growth has kept them out of that area. But it is a constant, it is hard work, but you have to take 70 to 75% of the numbers that you see, you have to remove. So if you see 100 pigs, you've got to remove 75 of them to stabilise the population.
Do you think it's? I'm not sure. The people who are making all these decisions behind the scenes and evaluations, do they live remotely from where the problem is? Like, do they live in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and those sort of places? And we no longer have those people who used to be with the agricultural department, used to be in research centres out in the bush and all these sort of things. Is that part of the problem? Is it all? Is all the information and the planning and that happening in the capital cities, and there's no real bureaucrat type people or government experts out in the field?
Yeah, so I can't really answer that. From what I see and talking to a lot of other hunters, that's how we feel. That's how the decisions are made. And if you can't put together data or a letter of concern in the way politicians or bureaucrats are used to seeing it, they just disregard it. So yeah, you have these environmental agencies or associations that want to get government funding for certain things. They know how to play that game, and so that they can get an ear. Where we're sort of, I come from a trade background and grew up in the bush, so I'm not good at doing that sort of thing. So it's very hard to get that message across.
What about things like local government, local government type things? I mean, they're actually on the ground in, Goondiwindi or Roma or whatever. What about their sort of input and expertise, or they're trying to sort of liaise with the state government to get these things organised? Is there interaction between, at least the local government is out in the local area? Is there any interaction with the local government to sort of try to, have that connection to the state government to get things done?
I'm not sure how much connection there is. I know each regional government, the local councils and things, they many of them that I've seen do have feral animal control programs. But again, from what I see, they are run within that framework dictated by the state. So
basically Brisbane makes the decision.
That's what it appears to be, yes.
What about your experience, Alan? Because besides the hunting and that, but just your connections with people who go hiking, and that they would see sort of damage. Is it a sort of natural thing for people who are avid hikers and experienced hikers to try to relay what they're seeing and that to some authority to maybe take care of the environment? And is there any pathway for that you've noticed over the years?
Just a couple of things that brings to mind the Glasshouse Mountains. There was a whole bunch of baby pigs. What are they called? Piglets. Yeah, there was a big rash of them. I've seen very large pigs there running across the road. But yeah, there were posts. We do Facebook posts when we do hiking, and the attitude towards these piglets, they were coming around the feet of the people there having a bit of a feed, and they thought it was cute. So unfortunately, there's I don't know about very little awareness, but I think in my experience, what I've seen, very little awareness of the damage that pigs do. I think a lot of people think they're cute when they're little. They've never had an encounter with a massive bull like Prisswood with tusks, and I think can literally kill you. If they'd seen that, they'd probably understand a little bit more how damaging pigs are. But just getting back to the authorities, as far as the attitude towards the environmental aspect of feral animals, the word, woke sort of comes in, because there is an uncertainty in some areas, and Mossman Gorge is an example, of whether the pigs are actually doing any damage or whether they're okay to be there, which sounds extraordinary. But I think I mentioned in our last wrap about this, a visit I made to Mossman Gorge. We were nearly run down by a couple of pigs in broad daylight. I heard an article on the radio about the Queensland Uni doing a study. They've got some funding about the impact of cassowaries breeding up there, and the pigs possibly eating their eggs. Chris might smile at that. They would eat their eggs and little cassowaries and anything they can get their mouth around. But this was specifically about cassowary eggs. I followed that up with the university, couldn't get to speak with anybody, but looked through the website directed to a line which I was astounded with, and it was those places are co-managed with the Aboriginal groups, and the line that I was astounded with was that with their consultations with the Aboriginal groups there, the jury's still out on their opinion as to whether they're an asset or a liability. That's the pigs to the environment. So we're so far off, we're going the wrong direction in relation to this. Yeah.
To me, because our native environment is fairly fragile to exotic species. I mean, you only have to look at stupid things like those Indian minor birds. They can replace a lot of native birds in a very quick time. It's not only scavenging food and eating their source of nourishment, but also basically hassling them on a regular basis to basically make them burn up more energy and basically move out of the area. Our governments don't seem to be active in any bio-management of exotic animals. Or if they are, it's very, very poor. And it's certainly no intensive sort of program to address any of these exotic animals. Is that what you find in general, Chris? That no, it's not just pigs. I mean, there's heaps of different. I mean, and here's one: dingoes. Dingoes are not a native of Australia. They were only introduced 4,000 years ago. They have an effect on the normal wildlife. Yet people sort of treat them as though they're part of the natural environment when they're not. So, and then we've got feral dogs, and even our little domestic cuddly pussycat. And I know for a fact we've had one of the nicest, gentlest cats you could ever have. Spend probably 18 to 20 hours of the day in the house, will sit on your lap and sleep all night, but goes outside, and every other week it will bring home some bird it caught. So even your nice little friendly pussycat can be devastating on the natural fauna. So have we got a myriad of problems that we should be addressing as well?
Yes. All the feral species, and unfortunately, governments only care about getting re-elected. And if the Green movement has got any sway on them or anything like that, they don't want to be seen to be encouraging or enabling people to control these things. Cats are a classic example. They kill millions and millions of native animals a year, and as a hunter, and there's a lot of the professional guys and the YouTubers, as we were discussing earlier. You go on there and have a look, and they remove cats from the environment and get hammered by the general public, saying, "Oh, you've shot somebody's pet, or you've done this or done that." So people, I don't know whether they're just not aware, or they don't want to be aware of the impact these animals have on our native species. They seem to want to bury their head in the sand and say, "Oh, it's all right. They're out in the bush, and they're not affecting me, so it doesn't matter." And the politicians, they're looking for votes, and as long as they get their votes, they're not worried about that either. If we can change that and have that as a forefront of their mind, that they're going to lose votes on losing native species, then something will be done.
It's the problem that the bulk of our population, because they now live in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and real big urban centres, that they're so disconnected from the environment. Like some of the greatest environmentalists, warriors around, they live in Melbourne or Sydney, and they don't, they've probably never ventured to the bush. Is it such now that the people in the city are so disconnected they've got a completely foreign or alien view of what's going on in regional Australia.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe that's true. And, as a firearms owner and a hunter, we get demonised on a daily basis. You mentioned about the gun laws before. We get attacked from all angles daily, from inner city people that don't understand that firearms are a tool to get a job done. I think most of those decisions are made on emotion, not on fact. And that goes for any time I've tried to bring up public land hunting with members that I happen to bump into or having a chat to. It's always public safety, and I think Alan alluded to that earlier about ricochets within Carnarvon Gorge. Suitably experienced and trained shooters, hunters, you're always aware of your backdrop. You're aware of what's going on, so that mitigates it. But that's what they've been fed, and so that's what they base their decisions on, without having any knowledge or willingness to listen to reason from other people.
Obviously, both of you would have friends and family that live in these big cities. Is it your experience when you try to engage with maybe not just your family, but maybe other people, contacts you have, but who are completely connected to the inner city living style? Do you have much difficulty relaying this to those people? Is it a real chore, and they accept this information you give them, or are they sort of put up a wall and things like that? How do you find it, Alan, we're dealing with people in the sort of urban environment when you're telling them about the situation out in the regions?
You're talking to me? Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, cats. Interesting because suddenly we've got three. I live on Mount Tamborine here with a reasonable sized block and a bit of rainforest, and I've encountered three different types of cats wandering around at night here, and that's only recent. I'm not sure why, but some other friends in Brisbane, their cat doesn't kill anything.
Not that they know of.
Well, they honestly
there's nothing in
believe.
Brisbane to kill that's all been killed.
Oh no, this area that I'm talking about is an area I don't want to dog my part of my family in, but it's a lot of bushland there anyway, and it's fairly inner city. It's only about 3 kilometres as the crow flies from the city. A lot of bushland there, and I know for a fact I used to go to school there. There's a lot of lizards, there's snakes, there's bandicoots. I know that for a fact. There's echidnas there, believe it or not. So yeah, the cats and lots of birds, lots and lots of birds. In fact, there's probably more birds there than before the people moved in because they're attracted to the food that they're fed. So yeah, I know the cats are they're out hunting every night, but people their cat and their dogs are part of the family now, and they're almost humanized. And the attitude is, no, my cat doesn't do it. Oh, they catch it. Sometimes they bring one in, but they didn't kill it. They just brought it in to show me. It's just, honestly, that's what they say. It does my head in. And as much as, these cats, they're a living creature as well, but you just can't seem to emphasize to the majority of people that those things are just killing machines. And if they saw and witnessed the beautiful native animals that they killed, maybe their attitude would change, but how are they ever going to witness that?
What about your experience, Chris, when you're dealing with people you might know or contact in the inner city, when you try to relay that what's going on in the regions in regards to damage done to our native environment by feral animals? Are they sort of sympathetic, or they're sort of a bit blasé, or?
No, I find most people are sympathetic after a while. When you go through, You need to explain it to them, a couple of times, because they are very, they're in
Isolated.
denial a lot. And I mean, everybody walks around with their mobile phones these days, and I have 4,500 photos on my phone, and most of them are in the bush. So I rip out photos and I show them the damage that pigs do to water holes and things like that. I show them the remains of birds and things that cats have killed, cats and foxes have killed, or lambs or calves that they've brought down and ripped to pieces. And it's not very pleasant to look at, but it definitely gets their attention. And the most common thing I hear is, I had no idea. I had no idea that they did that. So as Alan said before, they see those little piglets running around. They, oh, look how cute's this. There was actually a Facebook post, I think yesterday, of a pig up at Natural Bridge. And everybody was going, oh, yeah, I saw it there the other day. And, oh, how good is it? And things like that. And I go, this thing's ripping up the soil up there. It's not supposed to be there. But everybody's, oh, yeah, it's cute, or it's different to see. So it's a bit of a novelty. Once you explain to them, I find 95% of people come around and they are quite sympathetic. They don't do anything about it, but they say, oh, yeah, okay, I understand now.
What about the people who are actually running sort of environmental groups and things like that? Or is it foreign to their agenda in regards to, you would think a lot of these people would be, alarmed and want something done, but my general contact and with different groups and this is the people who are supposedly ardent conservationists and who get a lot of money. Like we have places in some of our coastal cities have a conservation council, and they've actually got up to $600,000 in grants over the last 5 or 6 years. Like, that's a lot of money, and all I see them whinge about is climate change or something like that. I don't see any action on actually protecting the environment and our flora and fauna, which is a bit of worry. What's your experience with those types of groups in regards to addressing this problem? Because it's their environment that's getting ripped up by these feral animals.
I just have to gather myself on this one. So they're good at raising an issue and saying, hey, this is a problem. There's feral animals in here, or this is happening. But once they do that, they think that it's somebody else's responsibility or the government's responsibility to take care of it. And nothing ever happens. It's, oh, well, I pointed it out, but I'm not actually going to do anything about it, or I'm not going to assist people that will
getting the resource to do something about it.
Yeah. And that brings me back around to having responsible, licensed people that can go in and they can trap in different areas, they can shoot in different areas, things like that. There are hunting organisations that do it. The SSAA, they have a couple of programs that they run, and it's not just going in and removing feral species from a certain area. It's also replanting and looking after the environment that way, of getting native plants back into the areas. So, we as hunters as a whole and associations are quite environmentally friendly in what we do.
The other thing that concerns me that you touched on, I mean, the government does in some instances have ranges and that, but from the Carnarvon Gorge type thing you're talking about, it doesn't seem that they've got the right mix of people there to ensure the preservation of the area. How do you make people aware that there needs to be a different resource, or you just can't either contact the department or get a fair hearing in regards to getting these areas properly staffed and managed, or is it just going to be business as usual? It'll be just some sort of ad hoc program, management, and things will just deteriorate, because it doesn't sound good for Carnarvon Gorge as you described it. And I don't know how you'd make things that get that thing back to a sort of at least half decent sort of thing, without a very active program to protect what's left there, and then also revegetate or revive the place by a lot of interaction.
Yeah, I go back to what Ned and his association are doing, the Australian Pig Doggers and Hunters Association, by getting this data together and getting it. I don't know if validated is the right word, but getting it checked over by an associate professor to make sure it's right. These are the things that we actually need to do to be able to present this to the politicians in a format that they actually understand. And then they can start seeing how big the problem really is and filter down from that way. So I think we're starting to get a lot more momentum on this front, but there's a long way to go. And the constant fear-mongering and vote grabbing from politicians about gun owners, it hurts a lot, of being able to move forward with that, because everybody's wary about hunters and things like that. And in general, in cities and things like that, we're frowned upon as if we're, some danger to society just waiting to unleash, and that's not the case.
Just as a matter of interest, can you think that maybe a program of targeting Pacific members of Parliament, like in the regions and that, to sort of be the vehicle to get this message into their parties and into Parliament, would be a reasonable way to do it. Although one of the biggest problem with the regions, you haven't got that many members, because soon as you go out of the southeast Queensland, the electorates seem to get a little bit unmanageable in size and that. So you got a member who's sort of tracking over hundreds of thousand kilometres, and he's probably got a lot of things on his plate. But do you think there needs to be some sort of between the groups that are out there, targeting one or two Pacific regional members and feeding them all this information, and hopefully they are at least sympathetic and capable of getting that message A, into their party, and B, into the Parliament?
Yes, 100%. And that's something I'm trying to teach myself and do here locally. I've had a couple of positive meetings with our local MP here on the Gold Coast. And I suppose this is the next step of me coming in and discussing this with yourself, is trying to get that momentum going, and so that then I can partner with some of these associations and help them go, well, this is what worked for me with basically an inner city MP. So let's build on that and go for the regional ones. I don't think would take much. They would be very sympathetic, because they're out there all the time and they'd see the problems. But getting the MPs closer into the city centres is where we need to target and get them across the line and show them what's really happening.
What about your experience, Alan, in regards to the relationship with getting the message across to A, bureaucrats, and B, politicians? And do you think there's a need for some coordination between sort of passive groups like hikers and working with people who are feared, gun owners, because they've got big tar brush. They all get brushed with the same problem and that. So Do you think there's a good alliance in the making between those sort of passive groups that are just hikers and enjoy campers and things like that, and making good links and association with those people who are also firearms owners and trying to protect their environment as well?
Well, my experience there is that encounters with the rangers and even the senior rangers have been good. They're all very passionate. They're there because they love the environment and they want to do the best they can. You mentioned earlier on about the numbers of rangers. The numbers have continued to drop, and the funding for feral management, fauna and flora, it continues to drop. The level above them, the ones, the managers in the main offices and so on, they're the untouchables. You just can't seem to get in contact with them, and yet they're the ones that make these decisions. And I've had some really impassioned conversations with very passionate, like I said, rangers who, they either just give up and leave. They don't. I was shocked to hear the pay scale for rangers. It's really disgusting. And they're there because they're passionate. They're not there for the money. So the kind of people who are there on the ground, but there's simply not enough. The other thing is nobody wants anything killed anymore, and that's that even extends to fauna. And this just astounds me. Recently, camphor laurel trees. Are you aware of how entrenched they are, particularly just over the border, northern New South Wales? There are literally tens of millions of them. They've taken over the environment there. They are enemy number one of farmers and any sort of native wildlife. They just block out everything. Massive, big European tree. Any tree that's over the Tweed Shire Council, I'm not sure how much further it goes, but definitely the Tweed Shire Council have protected any camphor laurels with a girth of over 1.5 foot, I think it is, 18 inches or something, 20 inches across the base. They're protected. Now that is, to me,
But that beggars belief, because
yeah.
you would think the Biosecurity Act in general, which the federal government is responsible for, it's responsible for keeping out feral animals, keeping out exotic plants and other problems. You would think they would have some sort of overriding control in regards to anything that's exotic. Is just, you got a license to kill it. It doesn't matter whether it's a plant or an animal, but if it's exotic, it doesn't belong here. Just get it out and try to get your environment back to the original native species that were there. What's gone wrong? Is there a disconnect between the federal government, which is responsible for biosecurity, the states and the local governments, or what's the real problem there?
The foundation for that decision was the big floods in northern New South Wales. It was observed that some farmers or landholders had removed some trees along the banks of the rivers and the creeks around there. And obviously you remove those trees and you have a massive flood like that, it's going to rip away the banks. But there's always going to be a certain amount of erosion with or without trees. But the original trees were in that particular area were she oaks, casuarinas. Now that could be managed more sensibly rather than just throwing a blanket protection on all of these big camphor laurel trees by sectioning off areas and say, okay, we're going to, do 1 kilometre of a particular creek in a controlled way and back it up with the the she oaks to take that place. And, you might be unlucky with the weather, but ultimately you would end up controlling it. But that's too hard. They just made this
It's also money. Do you think that's
Money.
also
That's
been,
it all comes back to money. It does. They just want to spend less and less money. They want tourists to come, so they put these shiny places. And there's a good one. I'll just mention this on the back of that. This is once again flora, not fauna. Burley Heads, I mentioned last time, and I've since reported Burley Heads. The weed infestation there is just completely and utterly out of control. There would be, you know, several hundreds of thousands, if not millions of weeds now. It's terrible. I've been going there since I was a little kid. And since it's been co-managed, it's been just let go. I contacted an environmental conservation group called Gecko. You're probably familiar with them. And they said they were going to get back to me about that, but they believe it was a matter of funding. So there it comes back to the money again. But this is critical. You know, I can just see, you know, these beautiful national parks being totally destroyed. The cycads out at Carnarvon Gorge, I mean to mention there, you know, you lose a tree, they grow pretty quick, not cycads. Those cycads you saw, Chris, some of them have been hundreds of years old. To get a metre of trunk on one of those cycads, probably, you know, 50 to 100 years. So those pigs are killing things that are hundreds of years old. So, yeah, you can go ahead and replant, but yeah, it's not going to happen in our lifetime.
well, just it is a question to both of you. Do you think the government should hold off acquiring more land off of private owners and cattle stations until they can control what they already have holdings of? Because to me, you can't just add more land and get better outcomes, because like the title of the show, land does not protect native fauna. No, humans do. Only humans are the only species that can make a difference, you know, one way or the other. But we now value the environment. We're now capable of protecting species, you know, that we recognise as native and that. And we're also capable of getting rid of those species that aren't native, you know, the feral ones and the exotic ones. So where's the disconnect in the minds of the government or the bureaucrats that are doing this? Because I just don't get it. You can't just have a program that doesn't provide a better outcome. And I don't see what they're doing as acquiring more land and just get rid of all the improvements and just make it, well, there's now open space, and somehow native species are going to be somewhat life of native species is going to be improved. It's completely lost on me.
Yeah, I think as Alan mentioned earlier, most farmers are environmentalists. They look after their land as well as their animals that are on there. So by removing them and having a system that is not working now take over, it's going to expand the problem. It beggars belief that they're going to continue to increase their land holdings but not manage it in a responsible manner.
Can I add to that? The politicians think that once you shut them down and get rid of the cattle and get rid of the man-made structures, that it will become pristine. It's imbalanced. It's going to be imbalanced without our attention forever, to a degree that our whole animal and flora environment would change dramatically. We've interfered with it by coming here and messing with it. We cannot just leave it alone because it will just get out of control. Because these, like pigs, for instance, I don't know whether they'd be referred to as an apex predator. I feel they are, because they can kill, you know, pretty much anything. They will just completely take over. There'll be nothing left. So there needs to be human intervention. When they lock these places up, they need to manage it, not just get rid of the human-built things. They get rid of the exotic species in there as well, both flora and fauna. But they're not even thinking about that.
But they've got to manage it all the time. It's not this idea of locking up land and just walking away and saying, aren't I such a good person? And government gives you a tick on the box and even considers you giving you another grant to go and acquire more land. Like, really, I'm at complete loss for who's actually running these sort of programs and how they're evaluating, because if the outcomes don't show improvement, well, you just don't keep doing the same again and expect a different outcome. So, and that's what seems to be so infuriating, that no one's being listened to in who are actually on the ground, people in the regions, people doing the jobs, people going to these places on a regular basis and seeing the damage. They're just, no one takes any notice of it. Like, it's the only people that seem to be taken notice of is some academic or someone sitting up in a concrete building or that. And it's just so frustrating for people who live in the regions that are affected.
Yeah, I think those academics, they cannot say things out of place because they're going to be a threat to their income. Whereas people like Chris and myself and all the other people out there who've seen things, have years and years and years of experience, are ignored because we don't have those degrees. But we are the ones that should be listened to because we've got nothing to lose. We're in it because we can see what's happening. We've got nothing, we don't have an income in this instance where we could lose it. But they're not listening to us. We're not considered worthy of being listened to because we're not professionals, but we know what we're talking about, particularly people like Chris is out there all the time.
But I'm sure people like Chris and yourself, everyone's got a mobile phone these days. You can make recordings. So, I'm sure these people who live in these big, the big concrete buildings in Brisbane and Sydney and that, they actually would get videos and see the actual damage. So it's not as though they wouldn't be informed or they wouldn't know, because I'm sure there's plenty of people like yourselves who would happily supply them with the video evidence from your trips out to the field. So what do we need to make them sort of open their eyes and sort of acknowledge what's going on?
Can I just finish the rest of the editorial in the Roma Times? What happened there? The editor, they're looking for something that is like clickbait, and what they honed in on my report was the bow hunters, like crazy people going there, shooting these arrows at these things, and it just fell flat. And I was very despondent about it because I thought this would be something picked up locally in Roma. There would be a big outcry because I provided videos and photos, and I thought it would go further. I thought it would go to the big city and or at least to Toowoomba, and people would start making a difference. All that happened, I think a year or so later, I spoke to a local ranger there, and she told me that they'd started baiting again, which to me is sad. And Chris, mentioned that before why, but they didn't, go in there and have a concerted effort, particularly down in the gorge. And I don't know if you agree with this, Chris, but is it easier to control the pigs that are down within the gorge where it's more pristine than the open land up above where you did the Great Walk?
Any, what would you class that as, like a small enclosed area?
Yeah,
you can
gorge.
control them quite easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not happening.
It's not popular a lot of times, but if they can't get away, you can get the whole lot of them.
That's right.
Yeah.
And they haven't done it at all.
No. Well, it's been a few years since I was there, but it was, it brought me to tears.
Yeah.
Do you also think, like, you're obviously in contact with the doggers and the pig hunters and that, so that, obviously there's a lot of groups out there, like, it really does seem that we need to somehow take the inner city people out of the equation so decisions can be made more locally and maybe be more effective, because the damage is there all the time, the reality is there all the time. whereas the people in the city, you know, in the bureaucracy and that, they're just so disconnected. So do you think there'll ever be a method of sort of getting sort of back to the days of where there's, you know, research centres and agricultural departments or something, or someone of authority in these regions who can make much better decisions? Because that's all we've seen over maybe the last 2 decades is people coming out of the regions with that sort of expertise. Do you think we can appeal to politicians and that to get people back and living in the, you know, in that sort of old research, agricultural research type centre type thing that can provide, see things on the ground, come to collect the proper evidence, make proper decisions, and get programs there, or we just never go to see that return of that sort of interest in the regions?
Yeah, I don't see that we'll ever get back to that. That would be fantastic to have people on the ground controlling certain areas and making decisions on that area of, okay, I'm going to let this group in to go and remove introduced plant species or introduced animal species from there, and they make the decision locally, and then that's their responsibility. I don't see that that'll happen, which is why we've got to target these people in the inner city, the bureaucrats and the MPs in the inner city. They're the ones that are wielding the power and making those decisions in this case. In saying that, a lot of something that popped up before when Alan was speaking, a lot of responses I get from inner city people is it's not their fault that they're there. Whether it's a plant or whether it's an animal, they go, it's not their fault. I go, that's 100% right. It's not the animal's fault that it's there, but it still has to be removed. And as Alan said, it's up to us to remove that animal, because it's not going to make a decision and leave and go back to its native country. So unfortunately, it's something that needs to be done.
Do you think maybe in the near future, different groups can sort of have a conference or something and try to get together and also have a sort of central focus, so that they can sort of use their collective knowledge and information, but we'll pump that into a very much more sort of core committee or organisation that's can go and it's got all that information, got the expertise, and can go and hound these people rather than Chris try to do something, and then Ned try to do something, and Alan try to do something. Do you think you need to get a sort of focus group or something to act as in between, to go and use them to do all the activity with the interaction with bureaucrats and politicians?
Can I just I have I think a long way to having a solution would be to have a proper environmental party. The Greens originally started out as an environmental party. They're no longer an environmental party, and it's clear, they've got a lot of other agendas as well. But in relation to all the clearing for all of these alternative power sources, they're not there. They're not speaking up. There's, thousands of hectares of land being trashed, and they're not there. We need a true environmental political party pop up in Australia before I can see any.
Someone pragmatic, common sense, very rare.
Yeah. Without going off the point of the original thing is to protect our unique Australian environment and nothing else. Not making any compromises, not saying, oh, well, I hate to use this one, horses, for instance. They had, a lot of people aren't aware that there were horses on Fraser Island. Do you both realise that?
Yeah.
They eventually got rid of them all. It was quite interesting, me driving on the beach, and the horses would actually stop you and stick their head in the window before they were fed. They eventually got rid of those horses, but look at the drama now there is down at the Snowy. You know, it's just being handled really, really badly, really poorly. The horses really aren't meant to be there, but they're beautiful animals and they're not dealing with it correctly and appropriately. There's not a true proper environmental party to go to air your thoughts and, you know, issues that you have on the ground out there.
Well, my alternative to an environmental party is that we just have some sort of regional party. I mean, they used to have the old country party and sort of break away from Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne. So you have regional states or something like that that don't have this colouring that's provided by inner city elites and that. So maybe we need new states or something, or just regional areas that have got autonomy to make these, you know, hard decisions that, you know, the people in the inner city just haven't got the emotions to deal with, you know, because it's too hard and you can't do those sort of things. Maybe we just need to divorce it, you know, divorce this decision making and from them and take it over into the regional areas where people are actually dealing with the issue on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think that would be fantastic. You know, the inner city, they focus on their local area, and they go, there's only X amount of votes west of the range, so we don't have to worry about them because we'll still get elected if we look after the people here in the city. Yeah, and it shows with the funding, and as Alan said before, you know, the funding for control programs and things through the national parks is continually going down, and you can see that in the amount of animals and plants, feral plant species that are propagating through those areas. Yeah, so taking that back to regional responsibility would be, I think that would be very helpful.
We've gone over the hour, so we'd like to give some sort of final statements. Maybe start with you, Alan, in regards to what you see is your role and the role of people who are out in the environment, like the hikers and campers and things. Do you think you need to sort of, I mean, there's Facebook and that you can use. Do you think there's a need to have a program where you encourage all the people who go out hiking just to inundate their local politicians and the Minister of Environment with photos and things like that of the damage they see? So it's, you know, it's there in their face all the time. Do you think you need to organise or could organise your, you know, passionate hikers and that to do that on a regular basis to be really, really annoying to all those people who are making the decisions?
Well, I'm a little bit, yeah, we put a petition recently, or it was a petition that was run in New South Wales to get 10,000 signatures. We got 10,000 signatures, and it doesn't really, it's an environmental thing. It was to the environmental minister down there. And Penny Sharp went to Parliament, it was supposed to be debated. It was completely ignored. So all the work and effort that goes into getting those petitions, you think, hang on, we've got to try something different because that didn't work. We're just completely ignored. No one answers emails. It's just the whole structure of government is just not. I don't know what the answer is, to be quite honest, other than people power. Getting back to the city, there is issues in the city right under the nose of all of these million or so people in Brisbane. You mentioned Indian miner birds. They're there. And people don't understand how damaging they are. Just adding. They got very strong feet. They go in and they find bird nests, for instance, in trees, like palm trees is a good example. At the base of all the dead parts, that's a good place. Little birds in there at their nests. The Indian miner birds go and kill and eat the birds and the eggs. And then they, believe it or not, they stuff that hole full of rubbish. I've been trimming Canary Island date palms, and those dead leaves are full of plastic bags. They're Indian miner birds. They stuff those holes full of rubbish so those native birds can't breed in there. And when the Indian minor birds need somewhere, they go in and use those little pockets to breed. That's why they're so prolific. But what are we doing to get rid of them? When I was a little kid, 6 years old, sparrows were a problem. The government put, a penny or halfpenny on a head. I started trapping them, but I felt so bad about trapping them and keeping them. It was awful. I didn't like it, but that's the only way. The government won't do that because, like what Chris said before, it's not their fault that they're there. They deserve to live. They're just living in the wrong country.
Mm. Well, I suppose the other thing is politicians will ignore you, right? As long as you're not a threat. But if you're a threat against their re-election or chances of election and that, then they might take some action. So I don't know. It does need a sort of big collection of people. Even if they can just gather in one electorate and be a threat to the city member or something. But that's the only thing that seems to make politicians listen, or prospective candidates. If there's an actual threat to their chance of being elected. Just moving on to you, Chris, before we finish up. I mean, as a person who's interested in the environment and also being a gun owner, obviously you're a fairly constant target of slings and arrows, you might say, from politicians, bureaucrats, and some members of the public. So, how do you work with other organisations and that to sort of, get that critical mass to first protect your position and also sort of advance things that need to be done?
Very, very difficult. Very difficult. I know Alan and I have had a couple of interactions on some Facebook groups there where people have gone after me when I've made comments about feral animals being there. I think it's just trying to get that that knowledge out there, or show people that people like myself, we're not the big bad boogeyman that a lot of politicians like to make us out to be. We're family people. We have businesses, we have jobs, and we're passionate about what we do, and we're passionate about looking after the environment. And something that you touched on there before, Bill, about getting groups together. I think that'd be fantastic if we could get a couple of big hunting organisations in touch with hiking organisations and start building from there. So then we get that people power. So the politicians really start looking at us and saying, hey, it's not just one group. There's several different groups here that are all pushing in the same direction. We better listen to these people.
Just finally on pigs, let's keep that. That was one of the main things. How do you think different hunters, because there's different methods of hunting. Of course, you got the piggers and doggers and that sort of basically do everything, without firearms on the basis. I mean, one of the neighbour here, he owned 5 pig dogs and went out hunting. Some people frown on it, but the thing is, different skill sets are needed for different situations. Like up here, a farmer can just have a localized problem, and so you don't need to have some sort of mass scale thing. But what you need to do is find those couple of larger pigs and the sows and that, and get rid of them, sort of thing, and that will keep things under control for a while. So there is a role for different skill sets. Yes. But what do you think is needed actually to make a dent in feral pigs in general in Australia? Because if these idiots think there's only 4 million, we've got a serious problem. Yeah. And if they don't realise that they're actually moving up from the 20 million to the 25 million onwards, then we haven't got any hope whatsoever.
Yeah, look, the biggest thing is changing the perception. Yeah, I've been around long enough that when I started with, riding motorbikes and shooting off the motorbikes. So you chase them down and shoot them. Then we moved into dogs, and I moved into dogs in a big way. And most of my professional side of things was utilising dogs to do that, because you could get onto more properties, because in the terms of a lot of farmers in the area, was you're not going to shoot any of my cattle or my sheep because you got dogs there. Then that went by the wayside, and there was a lot of bad press, I suppose, about that. And then if you had a dog, you couldn't get onto a place, and it went back to the rifles. So it's getting the message out there. You look at these guys, the SSAA running the Farm Assist program, the Australian Pig Doggers and Hunters Association. They're pushing for ethical professional hunting methods, and we've got to get that message out across to the farmers, to the property owners and managers and things like that, that when we come on, we are very respectful of the environment. We are very careful and safety conscious about what we do, whether we're shooting or running dogs, things like that. But it's got to be a concerted effort, because shooting, ground shooting is it is good fun. It is hard work. Running dogs adds another layer to that, again, into areas where you can't get in and shoot. You can't get the pigs out. The dogs can get in there and get them for you. And then your aerial shooting on top, and trapping. And if you run that all in conjunction, and you show property owners and the powers to be that it's run professionally and ethically, then we will make a dent.
Well, gentlemen, I think there's a long road ahead, and the only thing I can really suggest is you actually kidnap a few of the politicians and bureaucrats, take them out in the bush, tie them to trees where there's some pigs, and see how they fare, or how much they like the idea of pigs running around out there. Because now I don't know what it takes to wake up politicians and bureaucrats, because I don't know, they seem to be living in their own world, and our real world doesn't seem to come into equation. But again, gentlemen, look, thanks very much for your time tonight. I really appreciate it. Like I say, I hope all the different groups can sort of, really get together, hopefully form some sort of unit with, with the people from each one and fund them or support them, so that they can have the power to sort of get out there and address some of these bureaucrats. But let's hope something can happen going forward, because like I said, the government's attitude is we're just going to double the amount of public land, but the way it is, they have no intention to manage it or fund it to the level that it needs to be.
And thank you, Bill, for giving us this forum to express the way we feel and the things that we've seen. And yeah, very much appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. I hope on the different Facebooks and pages and that you keep putting pictures up of the Carnarvon Gorge and its decline, because I think that may help to wake some people up. But yes, I think it's all hands on deck to sort of wake up the people up in, I don't know, floor 22 of some building in Brisbane, because they don't seem to be tuned into us. Yeah. Again, gentlemen, thanks very much. If you just stay on the line, I want to introduce tomorrow night's show and just have a little chat. So, and then hopefully you can get to the big game tonight. If you've enjoyed tonight's show, please like, share, and subscribe to our Facebook page, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tomorrow night, I'll be having an episode with the commander of the Weipa area Marine Rescue. Now, the situation with Marine Rescue, we've had two organisations for some time. It's been the Marine Rescue Service and also the Volunteer Coast Guard. And they've operated as two separate entities with different capacities. And now there's a move which will soon be finalised to actually amalgamate all those assets. So please join us tomorrow night when we get that story. Thanks very much.